This is The Week on Word, a podcast featuring a roundup of the most interesting, informative, and entertaining interviews from Word Radio. You can listen to Word Radio anytime, anywhere on WURDradio.com and the Word Radio app. You can give us a play and download it today. In this episode, Angela Matthews, investment strategist and founder of the Happy Investor Method, joins Soulful Sunrise with Karen Taylor Bass to address the investment gap between Black men and women. And Adam Mahoney, climate and environmental reporter at Capital B News, joined Evening WURDs with Dr. James Peterson to discuss his 5-part series, Making 20 Years Since Hurricane Katrina. But first, Richard Lawson, actor best known for his roles in Dirty Harry, How Stella Got Her Groove Back, Grey's Anatomy, and more, joined Wake Up With WURD with Solomon Jones to discuss Tyler Perry's Beauty in Black.
Joining us now is Richard Lawson. He is an actor who is here to talk about Tyler Perry's new smash hit, Beauty in Black. Richard Lawson, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you very much.
That's good. You got a long career, 50 years in acting. How do you last that long in acting, man? A lot of people are flash in the pan. You've had some longevity.
First of all, you gotta love what you do. I was fortunate enough and to recognize in the very first thing that I did that I had an epiphany that this is what I was put on this earth to do. So actually, I'm just following my assignment.
I hear you. So your assignment is taking you from Dirty Harry to How Stella Got Her Groove Back, Grey's Anatomy, Sugar Hill. What's your favorite role?
People ask me that, and what I can tell you is that I don't choose a part unless I love it, unless there's something that it speaks to me. And so I don't really have a favorite part because I love everything that I've done, maybe except one thing where it's like, yeah, you could have been a little bit more focused on that one. But I just love the career, and that is in terms, I'm a storyteller, so yeah. I love telling stories.
Well, Tyler Perry's a storyteller too, and he's told a lot of stories, starting with stage plays and now, telling stories on television, the big screen. He's got his own production studio, which is huge. And so he has literally the means of production. What does that mean to have a Black creator who has their own production studio and the means to do these things himself?
I can't even begin to tell you what it is, what a pleasure it is when just driving on to the studio. First of all, it's 350 acres or something like that. And there's not a blade of grass out of place. It is so beautifully manicured. Everything is first class. It's wonderful to be able to walk onto a set and see 90% of Black people working behind the scenes. When I first got on the show or started as an actor back in 1969, you were hard pressed to find one crew member that was Black. Now it's majority Black people on the show, and the way that he treats everyone is really, first class. And all the actors talk about the fact that Tyler pays them more than anyone has ever paid them. So, I mean, it's a real revelation. He's a savant, and what he's created is just unbelievable and unprecedented. He's probably one of the more prolific storytellers of our time.
So, he's told a lot of stories and has built up a following. I remember going on bus trips with my mother's church, and they always had a Tyler Perry piece playing on the bus, man. Yeah. Hey, listen, I don't think there's anybody in the business that has had more of a loyal following and loyal audience than Tyler. Yeah. People show up for Tyler. Yeah. He has his haters too. But, but when you look at the overall thing, the amount of people whose lives he's changed, the amount of millionaires, Black millionaires that he's created, he's done a magnificent thing. Yeah, he absolutely has. And so, the latest thing that he's done is this new piece called Beauty in Black. Tell us about it. Beauty in Black,
it's like
it's like Dynasty and Game of Thrones got together and had a baby, and Beauty in Black is the result of that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's insane. It is insane. This season is every episode you're going to be having your hand to your forehead saying, "What just happened?" This is a very super rich family that is cursed by greed, avarice, jealousy, power control, and they all, have a will that they are trying to remain part of, and there are stipulations in the will that force them to deal with each other. And it's everything that you could imagine in terms of emotional betrayal is in the show.
Okay, so you said it was a mix between Dynasty. Now you tell your age now on Dynasty. You talk about Dynasty because I watched Dynasty when I was coming up. Good show, very dramatic. Matter of fact, my wife is kind of watching reruns of it now with the Colbys and the Carringtons and the fight over money, like the fight over businesses. Like it's a constant fight. You got some enemies, some villains. You got some heroes. And so I'm imagining what Brightness in Black is. If it's Dynasty with black folks, I'm loving it.
Oh, it's Dynasty with black folks, but on steroids.
Oh, wow.
On steroids. It's like, look, when it comes to money, you know what people will do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's great entertainment. It will keep you, it's a page turner. Mm-hmm. I tell you what. If you're smart, start watching it like early evening, mm-hmm. because you're gonna go through it. They're doing 8 episodes. It's 16 episodes, and they're doing it in sections of 8. So they do 8, and then they let it rest for a couple of months, and then they come back with the other 8. But it's one of those things where you will you're just going to try to go through all 8 before you turn it off because you can't. So if you want to get a restful night's sleep, start around 5 in the afternoon so you can get through the first 8.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to binge watching this thing on Netflix. Now, which season is this? Is this season number 2?
This is season 2.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. People think that they saw 8. They think that was season number 1 and the next 8 was season number 2. No, it's 16 episodes in each season. You just see them in 2 halves.
Mm. Well, I'm loving it, man. It sounds great. And Richard, are you in it? And what role do you play?
I play the brother Norman. There's 2 brothers who run this, who's head of this family, and it's a fight for control of the family business, and it gets it gets a little nasty in terms of who gets the control. And it's all tied to a will that my father set up, and he set it up in a way that you can't have one without the other. So they can't really destroy each other, but they try everything in their power to get in to gain control.
A fight over money. It's classic. I love it. Richard Lawson, tell us again, when is it airing and how can we check it out?
It's airing on Netflix. It comes out September 11th, and then you'll see the first 8 episodes. Don't miss it because it's always number 1. We've been number 1 twice in the world globally, and so it grabs everybody's throat.
All right. Well, we love it, Richard Lawson. I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning on WURD.
You're listening to The Week on Word.
Good morning. It's Solomon Jones, host of the hottest morning show on radio, Wake Up With WURD. Listen weekdays from 7 to 10 a.m. for laughter, for fun, for politics, for family, for more than you can imagine. Check it out every day, Monday through Friday. Wake Up With WURD on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURD.
This is The Week on Word, a podcast highlighting the top conversations on Word Radio. Make sure you look for and follow WURD Radio on social media. Up next, Angela Matthews, investment strategist and founder of The Happy Investor, joined Soulful Sunrise with Karen Taylor Bass.
Our guest this morning is Angela Matthews, Ange Matthews, the founder of The Happy Investor and Wealth Strategist. Thank you, first of all, for rising with us. I know 626 is no joke. So how are you this morning?
I am doing so well. How are you today?
I'm doing well. And I don't know if you remember, but we met, yes, right, at Karen Hunter's retreat.
When
I did the yoga class. Yeah, good to see you. What a small world. I'm sorry?
I said, it's so wonderful to see you. I still remember your activity. It was really mind transforming.
Thank you so much. And I remember your activity, which was financially transforming. I was telling my producer, Fahim, about it, and a couple of my friends signed up. But I digress. Let me talk about who you are. Today, our guest is Angela Matthews, as mentioned, Ange Matthews, the founder of the Happy Investor Method and the host of the inaugural Wealthy Her Collective, which has brought together women of color, executives, and entrepreneurs for candid dialogue on money, investing, and policy. For over 15 years, she has helped thousands, including Goldman Sachs, Ralph Lauren, and the New York Philharmonic achieve financial independence, their employees. Major organizations now utilize her Money Mastery program to enhance employee financial wellness. She's here today to remind us that only 24% of Black women feel confident in building wealth, compared to 52% of white men. She's also here to talk about not just women, but Black Business Month, Black men, but most importantly, to help us close the gap with joyful, unapologetic strategies for money, mindset, and freedom. Okay? Welcome to Soulful Sunrise. How you doing, Queen, again?
I'm so elated to be here and talk about a topic that is not spoken about enough. So
let's do an icebreaker. Yeah, let's get into it. So icebreaker first. Stocks or real estate?
I do stocks over real estate, even though
Just one. What stock?
Stocks.
Passive income, side hustle.
Passive income.
Save first, invest first.
Invest first.
Long-term growth, quick wins.
Long-term growth.
Talking money at brunch or keeping it private?
Talking money at brunch.
So the first question I have for you is, how would you define abundance?
I think abundance is always realizing that we're in a state of overflow. And so abundance is, first things first, realizing that everything you have is what you actually need. Everything else after that, I like to think of it as sprinkles on a sundae.
Ooh,
and so really, when we're talking about investing, we're talking about having more money, we have to realize that the reality is, for a lot of us, we're okay. You know, we have a roof over our head, there's food, our kids are safe, our families are doing okay. Can they be better? Sometimes yes. But the reality is, once you start from that point of, I'm okay, then you can step into what abundance means. And abundance to me truly means always being in a state of overflow.
I love that. And I love the way you broke that down so eloquently for us. So it's Black Business Month. And in your work, you say that you want to close the gap with Black women and you want to shift our mindset. What do you think our mindset is, and how can you empower us to shift this? And remember, we also have a huge male audience also, so inclusive.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the reasons why I speak a lot about Black women or women of color is because, typically speaking, a lot of women bear the responsibility of taking care of not only their children, but also generations ahead of them or before them, their parents. Now, when I think about that, I think that men are typically encouraged for taking risks, and women are also encouraged to play it safe. And so these have huge ripple effects and impact on not just wealth, but our family structures and our financial inheritance. And so every now and then we focus on women, though we do cater to almost everyone and men. Whether you are born male, a woman, in a social economic class, it really doesn't matter. most of us aren't taught this in school. A lot of us are first generation investors. And so I'll come to a lot of the things I'll say. It'll apply to you if you're a first generation investor. If you're thinking that I have no idea what's really happening here because things are moving so fast and no one really took the time to stop me. And what that lends to is just lack of knowledge, lack of access, and of course, lack of confidence. So that's where the gap is.
Yeah. So the first, how did you get into this? How was this your background? Did you go to school for this? What was your pivot when you were like, you know what? Happy investor method. This is the blueprint. I want to help. How did that start for you?
When I started investing, I was making $40,000 a year and I had over 6 figures in debt. When I calculated how am I going to pay this debt off, saving was not the answer. I could not save fast enough to actually pay off 6 figures in debt. And so what resulted in me just doing an internet search on how do you get rich, 2 things came up. You're going to have to either be an entrepreneur to be self-made is what it's called, or you're going to be a investor, a passive investor. Start creating money that can live without you needing to be there to have it grow. And that's when I started. For 10 years, and this was about 19 years ago, for 10 years, I wandered in the darkness. I bought a little stock here. I did an app there. And it was really hard to figure out what was happening. I thought everyone else was doing it but me. So I didn't know who to ask. And it wasn't until I started taking classes, reading books, transparently following older white gentlemen who already figured it out and realizing that there's nothing different between them and I. I realized that deep down inside, I might have had a belief system that thought that if they didn't look like me, if someone ultra wealthy didn't, that I didn't see them having the money or the lifestyle that I wanted, the investments, somehow I thought maybe it's just not for me. And that was the first step that I took, realizing that, hey, there's no difference between me or anyone else that's ridiculously wealthy. I can be the wealthiest person in the room if I, 1, make the decision to be, and 2, get the resources and support to do it. So that's how I started. And that's how the Happy Investor Method got created. After 10 years of figuring it out, I realized that, wow, we're onto something here, helping people with their money.
So much to unpack. So that's how it started. What was the first investment that you made that you were like, you know what? Girlfriend's about her money. What was that?
I remember it so clearly. It was.
I see the smile.
My first investment was Apple. And it was Apple because all of my friends were getting an iPhone. I think at the time they were on the iPhone 4S. I know I'm dating myself. I look young, but
you can't be dating yourself. Trust me.
So the iPhone 4. And I remember seeing the price tag for it. And it was at the time a couple $100s. Right now it's, a couple thousand to get an iPhone. But at the time I could not afford an iPhone. I just didn't see why I would put all this money into something that I had another phone that did the same thing. But I saw all of my friends, colleagues, people going crazy over iPhones, and I couldn't afford the actual phone, but I could afford the stock.
Wait a minute, Angela, you just can't speed bump that. Just say that again, because sometimes we miss the message. You couldn't afford the phone. Go ahead.
I could not afford the phone, but I could afford the stock.
And how much was the stock when you purchased it?
At the time, it was around $225.
And what is it now?
Oh, now it's had splits. It's done wonderful things, but the value of that now would probably be about 1,200% more. And so the stock has grown above and beyond. And it's really probably one of my top 5 companies that have performed.
So I do believe the barrier for us sometimes is the mindset barrier. We feel overwhelmed. We are bogged down. We're taking care of so many different things. So to the happy investor listening, the future happy investor listening, how can they start today to change the mindset, how it relates to investing and wealth? What would be the first 1 to 3 things in your financial toolbox to empower them?
The first thing you want to do is really think about, why are you doing this? When you're starting to think about investing, having your money grow, usually when people come to me, one of our students or someone sees or reaches out, they're thinking that I've been working really hard, but this can't be it forever. And the reality is it can't be. You know, our bodies are getting older. The people around us are getting older, and your interest changes. Economies change. Jobs come in and out every single day. So you're right. If you have that hunch, this cannot be it forever, but that doesn't mean your money should stop growing. So you have to really anchor yourself in what is the why. Am I doing this because I want to have a legacy and I don't want my children, my nieces, my nephews, my grandchildren to work so hard as I do? Are you thinking about, hey, later on in my life, I want to be able to take care of myself? Are you thinking that, screw later on in my life, the next 2 to 3 years, I want this to be the best years of my life so far? And so you really have to think about your why. And then you have to actually get a real goal. So I think a lot of us have our whys, especially in our community. We are extremely passionate. We love to support each other for the most part. And we really want to be the strong one in our families and our communities. However, we sometimes do not put an actual goal there. And so that's the other part. Once you figure out that maybe I want to be work optional, that's what we call it here at the Happy Investor Method. Once you figure out that, hey, I want to support this cause, you need to put a dollar amount on that. And it might seem a little scary when you start calculating it. You know, when I started calculating how much do I need to pay off this debt, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars because I had hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
Talk is real. Yeah.
See the goal. Now we can start breaking down a way for you to actually get there. And with investments, it's not all on you. So I thought I had to actually pay all that money back. I didn't realize that if I invested and became really good at it, I can use other people's money, the money that grew with the investments, to facilitate the rest of my life. And that's what it is now. So those are the steps you want to think. You want to think, why are you doing this? What is the actual goal? And be realistic. How bad do you want this? Because some of us, realistically speaking, we cop out on our dreams very easily.
Period. Drop that right there. I'm just going to walk over that and get right into what are the 3 biggest myths about investing that you find hold us back. Myths, right? We don't even think about it, but we heard about it and it's a folklore. What's that?
The 3 biggest myths that I hear when it comes to investing is, 1, you need a lot of money to start. And this is such an interesting thing. And it's actually a mindset because everyone has a different definition of what a lot of money is. Mm-hmm. For someone, a lot of money might be $10. Another person, it could be $500. It could be $5,000. It could be $10,000. It spans the gamut, right? Someone making 6 figures may have access to money. And yet when they hear $500 or $1,000, think that's a lot, but that's not really in proportion to what they're earning. So the real truth and why this is a myth is that you can actually get started with as little as $25 if you really wanted to, because we can get something called partial shares. When you think about, do I have enough money or not have enough money? I think we're really thinking about, what can I do without freaking out about losing this money? And you want to start thinking about, how much am I willing to put in to see if this is something that can really work for me? And that number is going to be different for everyone, but you're really going for, hey, I'm just going to put something here and see how this goes. I'm going to work at making it grow. So that's the number 1 myth. You need a lot of money to start. When I started with about $100 a week. So you don't. And now I'm a passive millionaire. So it's okay. You can start small.
And you talked about the partial share. Like, even, we're on our phones all the time. You can just go into Cash App and be part of that. Like, it doesn't cost a lot, but like you said, you got to be in the game. You got to be in the game, right?
If you're not in the game.
Partial share, or what is number 2, you would say? The biggest myth is you need a lot of money. You don't need a lot of money. You just got to go.
The next myth is investing is too risky. A lot of people that I meet, they might have savings and they've done a really great job at saving their money. They've got a couple $1,000s. It's working for them. But money has this wonderful quality of just evaporating. And I call it strainer money. And so it does. It's here today. And then over a couple of tomorrows, it's less. And that's because you put all that money in there. But you're thinking at the same time, I don't want to risk it. I worked so hard for this money. Why would I risk it on something like investing? But the way I think of it is, hey, the bigger risk is not investing at all. I have a client and her name is Tiffany, and she's always saved. In her household, they said, save, 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 save. And then what she realized is that all this time she saved all this money, but her friends who were out there investing, they were there buying assets, buying real estate, buying second homes, rental properties. They were doing all of this. And then she said, what happens? This isn't even enough to help me last a whole year, and I'm supposed to retire off of this. It's a number that sounds good, but when you actually have to do the work with it, well, this can only last a year and a half. So it's actually a bigger risk to not invest it at all. Because if you stop working and you stop putting that money in there, then the money stops coming. You need to find a partner with your wealth. And that's through investing.
And if before we go to break, what is the third myth, if you have?
Of course.
Yeah.
You need to know everything to begin and be successful.
Oh.
So
is that where the happy investment method comes in?
It is. It is a playground where we get to have fun. We get to learn with joy. And when we're doing the happy investor method specifically, you start small. You start with a dummy account. You just start, because you're not going to know if this is something that can work for you and you specifically until you start getting the data points. And so there's no way to know everything. When I started, I read so many books. I was online doing so many searches, classes, and at the end of the day, I had a lot of knowledge, but I was still pretty broke. And so I don't want you to be a broke, smart person. A lot of us, we get all these degrees and we think it's going to really increase our wealth. What you need to do is you need to start before you're ready.
Let me ask you this. For Black business owners listening, funding is harder to come by now, especially now. What are the opportunities now that you have been seeing, especially with all these national resources being cut?
It's really interesting because with all of these resources being cut, a lot of people might not have the same access to funding as they did before in the past. This is a time when we really need to get creative. And so you want to find who your allies are. I think this is a great opportunity to go to local banks in terms of if you need funding, credit unions, CDFIs, which are community development financial institutions. We've got a corporate partner called LISC, and the local LISC, just search them and you will find they also do a lot of local initiatives. So there is support out there. The other thing you want to do as a business owner to bring some of that money back is to really create a solid tax strategy plan. I know a lot of people of color, a lot of Black business owners typically do not fully utilize their retirement funds. They don't utilize their solo 401ks or SEP IRAs or their individual retirement account. They might have someone doing it and think that that's okay, but there are ways for you to have wonderful tax incentives. There's something else that I love to talk about called a DAF, a donor advised funds, especially as money is getting funneled outside of our community. I think it's a really great time for us to pour into our communities. And what a donor advised fund does is it makes it so that you have an immediate tax write-off for donating to a cause that you believe in. And so this is something that a lot of us, especially business owners, and even just individuals who earn six figures or more, you can create a donor advised fund, direct those funds directly to charities and organizations that you love, charities that support Black businesses, charities that support people of color. And then that way we get that immediate tax write-off to make it a win-win.
Love that. 215-634-8065. If you have a question this morning for our guest. At the Wealthy Her Collective, you discuss benefit cuts and shifts in economic policy. And what should women and people of color be paying close attention to? So I know you just listed some. Is there anything more specific or anything else we should be paying extreme attention to?
Absolutely. So a lot of our community happen to be medical professionals as well as nurses. And what we're realizing is that
and teachers
as well. And what we're realizing is that there are a lot of people who did have an abundance of healthcare resources that are now cut. Now, a lot of people might think that that might apply to only a social economic class of people. However, it impacts the whole chain, whether you are a traveling nurse, whether you are an investor in pharmaceutical companies, whether you're thinking about having aging parents. These are something that you need to consider, as there are a lot of changes happening right now in healthcare, and a lot of people aren't thinking about that. So what you want to do is start refocusing, reallocating where your wealth is. Tech is still really on the up. You want to start thinking about financials, perhaps. And we talk a lot about this in our community here at the Happy Investor Method. We talk a lot about how do you make sure that you are going to be on top regardless of what's happening in our economy and in our legal system. And that's what you have to do as the owner of your money.
I love that. My mom was telling me yesterday, she's a senior. She was saying how she feels that seniors are being penalized for having great driving record and so forth because her insurance went up from like $100 something to like something ridiculous. She was telling me, she was like, she was like, what's that about? And they were like, seniors, you guys are old. Like, we're not investing in you. So we are making it kind of, prohibitive for you to be insured. And I was like, man, there's like really and truly, as you become older, if you are not secure in so many different ways, you're penalized.
You are. And the reality is we don't know what the future has.
Yes.
We don't know if Social Security is going to be here forever. We don't know the cost of living with inflation. It's just, you just have to
unknown.
It's the unknown. We work with a lot of folks who are retired right now, and they're trying to understand, how do I use this pension? How do I use this retirement? Am I getting taxed? What is the required minimum distribution? There's so much that they don't prepare us for when we want to become work optional. So you really have to almost over prepare to make sure that maybe you'll be okay.
Yeah, I love work option. I love that. That's my jam. So I have to do a plank, but I want you to break down with the little time we have and then wrap up and let people know if you have a seminar coming up or how they can get in contact. But what are some of the best investing strategies or tips succinctly that you can say for 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50 plus?
Absolutely. So in your 20s, you want to focus on actually starting. And I'm going to say something at the end of this that's probably going to undo everything I'll say, but I love answering questions. So in your 20s, you want to focus on investing, even if it's $50 a month, just start that habit. If you know it's someone in your 20s who's around you, make them start, because you have enough time to make mistakes that you'll have to learn along the way. In your 30s, you want to prioritize your retirement accounts and growing your income. So make more money, but also invest your money while you make it. You're no longer on the struggle bus. And so you really want to start making that money grow. In your 40s, once you figured out how to make your money grow, you're going to double down on the same strategy. And so I call this the refiner stage. You're going to refine what you're doing. And in your 50s, I call this the peace out stage. You're going to really try to protect your wealth, start thinking about legacy. Now, I know a lot of people in our community, this is going to be hard to take, because you might be listening to this and you might be in your 40s and you might say, girl, I didn't even start investing in my 20s. What am I supposed to be doing right now at my age? And so what I want you to do is I want you to think of this in terms of stages. If you're a beginner, if you're a person who's done this for about 2 to 3 years, if you've been doing it for 5 to 7 or 10 years, and then if you've been doing this 10 years plus, that's what you have to think about. Your first stage is actually start. Second stage, prioritize those retirements, because like we said, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And you also get to mess up a little bit more than if you needed the money like in 3 to 5 years. And so these are the things that I want people to start thinking about when they're approaching the topic of investing. It's not an age thing. We're all going to be work optional at different points in time. We all have different things to offer and different life stories. And so your life might not fit in the cookie cutter age group, but you still get to have your money work for you. And so that's something that I want you to do and think about. Start the journey wherever you are in the journey. Don't give up until you get your goal. If you're not seeing the results, come over to the Happy Investor Method, because we can actually show you how to get better results with your money.
So we're going to do our plank. And Fahim, are you ready for the 1 minute plank? Angela, I'm going to ask you to close us out. Talk about the Happy Investor Method, if you have a seminar, webinar coming up, and how people get in contact with you, and then leave us with a message that we can carry in our hearts and spirit and soul today. So the show is all on you. We're going to be planking. All right, Fahim, we're ready.
Plank it out, friends. Plank it out. So I'm Ange Matthews, and you can get your guide at happyinvestorguide.com. That is the easiest way for us to connect. happyinvestorguide.com. Tonight, actually, we have a watch party. I was on an interview last week where I showed people how you can have a ridiculously wealthy portfolio with just 10 stocks. That's right. 10 companies is all you need to be ridiculously wealthy or to become work optional. And I'm going to break that down this evening at 6:30. If you go to happyinvestorguide.com, put your email in, and we'll make sure to get you the information to join us. Now, what I want to say for you while you're here, your money loves you and it wants to have a deeper connection with you. And when you release the responsibility of having to do it all and to let your money support you during this walk of life, you're going to see so much open up to you. You're going to see that your money's been there for so long, cheering you on since the day you were born. And you're going to see that it wants to be with you until the last breath you take and then some. And so what I want you to do is, this is a call to you to actually have a deeper relationship with your money through your investments. There's no reason for you to not be the wealthiest person in the room. You've got this. I, Ange Matthews, am here to support you at the Happy Investor Method. Go to Happy Investor Guide to get on the list so you can join us this evening.
Ange Matthews, Happy Investor Guide. Tonight on Wellness Wednesday is the watch party, where you are going to break it down for us, 10 stocks that we can invest in. And is there a minimum we need to invest in when you break this down? I don't want you to give away the secret sauce, but is there a minimum?
There is no minimum. And so, like I said, you can actually purchase $25 to $100 of a share and still it will grow at the same rate. And so again, huge misconception that keep people out. They're thinking, I don't have thousands and thousands of dollars. You don't need thousands and thousands to start. You just need to put your pinky toe in the water. And if that's even as small as $50 or $100, you can do it, just to prove that it's something that can work for you.
Oh my goodness. One more time, give us it's Happy Investor Guide.
HappyInvestorGuide.com. And we made it easy for you. HappyInvestorGuide.com.
And it's spelled Happy Investor, no craziness.
Nope. HAPPY Investor, INVESTOR Guide, GUIDE.com. It'll redirect you to where you got to go. It's the
yes. Thank you so much for rising with us. Oh my God. Great information, great energy.
This is the Week on Word.
Why is Word important to the community?
WURD actually literally saved me from mainstream media.
Word is a black gem.
Word is just unbelievable with the information that I have learned.
When we sit there and we think about how important Word is, that alone should make us give.
Back in the day when Churchy Woods was on, we had no idea that we needed to support the radio station like we know now.
Listeners, we gotta save it. We gotta save our Word radio.
Like, if it wasn't for black media, you wouldn't know who a music soul child is.
Visit WURDradio.com/support. You're listening to the Week on Word podcast. To learn more about our programming, visit wordradio.com. Our last conversation for this episode features Anna Mahoney, climate and environmental reporter at Capital B News, who joined Evening WURDs with Dr. James Peterson.
I want to welcome to this program journalist Adam Mahoney, who is the climate and environment reporter at Capital B News. Adam, welcome to Evening WURDs.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. As we continue with our headlines and highlights for today's program, I want to play this clip, Adam. It's about the 500 black neighborhoods vanishing in major cities over the last 4.5 decades. And this is from your reporting. So, young Mighty Jordan, let's hear that clip.
500 black neighborhoods across America have vanished. Through gentrification and other displacement efforts, historically black neighborhoods have been eroded over the past 45 years. In Los Angeles, that's looked like 92% of once majority black neighborhoods no longer being majority black. In neighborhoods across Harlem and Brooklyn, we've seen, acts of black culture be criminalized as non-black people have moved into neighborhoods. In Atlanta, we've seen, transit hubs disrupt black neighborhoods and displace folks just like we saw around World War II. And in Washington, D.C., in Malcolm X Park, where there used to be Sunday drumming circles, they've all but vanished as newcomers, have replaced the culture of these communities. As gentrification has taken root across the country, we've seen more than 500,000 black folks virtually disappeared from their neighborhoods, while there's been 3 million people of all other races kind of replaced them. In Los Angeles, we have Tim Watkins, who's the president of the Watts Labor Community Action Committee, whose neighborhood has shifted from 80% black to 70% Latino over the last couple of decades. He's using his organization to, buy land and properties to house people, and he's making sure to participate, you have to have a Watts zip code. Community efforts are really important to stop the movement of gentrification from displacing black folks across this country, but it also needs to be supported by government action. The way that zoning laws and, construction works in this country, if a government agency wants something to happen, oftentimes it will. When people think about gentrification, they think about cleaner streets, new buildings, new cafes, but they don't often think about the people that have been displaced. And as this is, happening all across the country, there are ways to protect and preserve Black life and Black culture. And a lot of that has to do with supporting the Black folks that you see, your neighbors, and also the Black cultural institutions that really drive, not only America's economy, but what it means to be American.
I want to welcome back to the program from Capital B, journalist Adam Mahoney. Adam, welcome back here to Evening WURDs. Adam, I know Tim, but just by coincidence here, his family's been doing that kind of work for generations. Can you talk to our audience a little bit about how this has happened? I mean, Philadelphians are not unfamiliar with gentrification, but how does it happen at this scale?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of perfect is not the right word, but it is a convergence of so many different factors. In that video I mentioned, after World War II, we saw transit hubs, so we saw freeways and roads go straight through the heart of Black communities, and that was kind of like the first layer of urban displacement for Black folks across the West and the Northeast and the Midwest after they had moved during the Great Migration. And then in the aftermath of that, there was this concept of, urban renewal. We saw once that, the heart of the Black economy and Black cultural hubs were removed by new infrastructure. We saw, violence and poverty, come in, as folks were fighting for resources that no longer existed for them. And then the government once again used that as a means to displace folks. And we saw that, to the death of kind of affordable and public housing, on top of elements of redlining, right? Which, made it, virtually impossible for Black folks to, purchase homes and get loans in certain areas of communities. And then, in the last 20, 30 years, we've just seen a major population shift and movement in terms of, the urban to rural divide, in addition to, an increase in immigration and all the while, kind of the resources and ability for Black folks to purchase homes and then actually stay in their homes has kind of dwindled. And we saw it in 2008 with the housing crisis. Black folks,
the largest bleed off of Black wealth in my lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, this is something we've seen generation after generation. So when you put that into consideration, kind of that abysmal and disheartening fact about all of these Black neighborhoods that have disappeared, it makes sense.
And so where are Black people going? Are they being dispersed? Are they, when these are, for the most part, residential, home ownership type of neighborhoods, when 500 neighborhoods disappear, where are all those families going?
Yeah, I mean, people are just getting pushed further and further kind of to the edge of the urban center. So I grew up in Los Angeles, and over the last 45 years, 92% of majority Black neighborhoods in Los Angeles that once existed have ceased to exist because of displacement and gentrification. And those folks, including a lot of my relatives, have been pushed to, kind of neighboring counties bordering, the desert, places that are starting to develop now, but really don't still have the actual resources, don't have the education system that a city of the magnitude of like Los Angeles might have. So it's setting people back generations in terms of their access to kind of economic mobility. But yes, it's really just pushing people out of that urban core into places that are either undeveloped or developing. And it's just another blow in terms of that lack of access to opportunity.
So, Adam, I want to move to the solution side of this a little bit. I mean, you talked with Tim Watkins of the I think it's the Watts Labor Community Committee or Community Action Committee. As I mentioned, I've just for full disclosure, I've known Tim for a long time. But that's a multi-generational effort. Adam, can you help folks understand what him and his family have done to establish their own footprint there, but also to facilitate a certain kind of generational home ownership in their community?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Watkins family has kind of been a major kind of power breaker and playmakers in Watts and South Central for, since the 60s. After the 1965 uprising in Watts, Tim's father, Ted Watkins, founded the Watts Labor Community Action Committee to kind of push forward a lot of the demands that residents had at the time around, cleaning up the environment, having access to fair and safe housing, community investment in terms of educational opportunities. And Tim has kind of attempted to take that further. I first met Tim a couple years ago doing a series of stories focused on Jordan Downs, which was a historic public housing complex in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles that has been facing soil and lead contamination for decades, which, relates to the physical health of the community, but also has some deep impacts on the ways that, around social cohesion and how people can relate to each other. But he's really been making those connections, around how an environment can be degraded in terms of, pollution and how that will impact not only your access to housing, but kind of all the access to opportunities around you. And recently his organization has been attempting to, kind of put a dent into the homelessness crisis in Los Angeles, which disproportionately impacts Black folks. In LA, Black folks are like 5 times as likely as non-Black people to be unhoused. And he started a program is in the stages of finalizing a program where, purchasing some properties that he will allow, unhoused folks or folks facing housing insecurity to be housed as they get back onto their feet. And that comes with, both access to healthcare, different job training, things like that. So really a program that you would think the government, should be running.
You would think.
In running, yeah. But he's stepping up, and we're seeing, different programs like that, maybe on a smaller scale, but all across the country.
So this is that. Yeah, that was my next question. I mean, I just want to be clear with our audience. I mean, again, the Watkins family's been doing this in that neighborhood for a long time, but it's not rocket science either. They literally just started with owning their own properties. They do own multiple properties privately in that neighborhood, but then they did, I think, a community center, and they just continue to do the work. They committed their lives as a family to the work, right? But when you see, are there other models like that? And are there ways for people in the Philadelphia community or other communities, are there other models that we can look to, study, and learn from? Because I think just from the limited amount of time I've been around the Watkins family, I can tell you, and you probably get this from your reporting too, they see what they're doing as like a form of community activism, like home ownership and controlling the economics of their neighborhood is like a form of community action. I'm not sure if everybody sees it that way, but I don't know how else you resist this kind of onslaught of gentrification that's at national scale.
Yeah. And I will also make the point. I mean, I think in a place like Los Angeles where the population is shifting, pretty quickly, it's not also about like blocking other folks from moving into the neighborhood. I mean, Watkins made it clear that, housing is a right, but it's about making sure that the people that have called the place home for generations get to remain there as, more housing might be built to accommodate needs of a growing city. But, I live in New Orleans now, and there are also similar models of kind of maintaining, particularly for Black folks, maintaining the culture and a rootedness in the city. In the aftermath of Katrina, New Orleans has been one of the fastest gentrifying places in the country, as we lost 200,000 people that, never returned, and white and wealthier people have moved in and kind of bought up properties. But like in the lower 9th Ward, which, was kind of the poster child for the destruction of Katrina, there's, a couple of new community land trusts that are, buying up empty lots, and ensuring that, they're owned by everyone in the neighborhood. So, it's a group of, maybe if there's 10 people on 10 homes on a block, it's 10 home owners, putting in funds to purchase that property, and using it as kind of a investment. So they've been turning, empty lots maybe into community gardens. So things like that, where it's making sure that your community is your community and your resources are for the people that have called the place home. And there are different examples across the country like that.
Do you think that there are either, like cultural adjustments? Are there strategic kind of cultural adjustments that the Black community has to make in the 21st century to understand the scale? Again, I think people talk about gentrification. They see it in their neighborhoods. I'm not sure. I mean, your reporting is incredible here, Adam, right? Because I'm not sure everyone understands or appreciates the full scale of it. Again, thinking more on the solutionary side of this, are there other things that we should be thinking about as a community to try to stave this off? I mean, it seems clear to me that we've got to take some agency in terms of doing a better job of saying, hey, property ownership is an important piece for our community. And you got to figure out ways to think about how do you pass that on as a way of passing along wealth. But are there other things that we have to do, that individuals listening to this program who are not going to join the local version of the Watts Labor Action Committee, that they need to be thinking about and doing in terms of figuring out how we can make home ownership? I'm not talking about like flipping houses. I'm talking about just general home ownership, a cornerstone of what we think about from a community perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I think the simple, or maybe not so simple, but the common theme that has come up as I've been doing this reporting across the country, is, don't sell your grandparents' home. When we think about who owns
is it just as simple as that, Adam?
I mean, when we think about who owns properties in this country, we're about to see the biggest transfer of wealth in U.S. history over the next 2 decades. More than half of homeowners in the U.S. are folks who are 50 or older. And we do see, I mean, it is the family issue, it's a cultural issue. There are a lot of things that go on, right? And when someone passes, and a lot of things that come to the surface. But that has been one of the largest drivers of gentrification, as we'll see, Black families decide to sell their property for whatever, quick value that offers. But they're not necessarily selling it back to other Black folks, because that's not who is buying homes today, because of the kind of racial inequities we see and the wealth gap, and who has access to funds to, put down a down payment. It's quite frankly, statistically, it is not Black people in the United States in 2025. So by keeping those properties in your home, in your family line, that's one way to make sure that, Black home ownership continues. And then another thing that came up, when I was talking to researchers and advocates, is just make sure you're aware of, like, your neighbors or what's going on at the kind of city council level. When we think about like development and zoning, those are public meetings. No matter where you live in this country, you have access. You have, the legal right to make public comment, and decisions are being made every single day in our neighborhoods about kind of that transfer of wealth and land that people do have a say in. And I know that's a very difficult thing, because everyone has, you have jobs, you have family responsibilities, and you can't be going to a noon public hearing. But those are things that are going on at all times, and there is a way to tap in. It's not all the time, at least somewhat regularly.
So, Adam, you mentioned that you live in New Orleans, and you talked a little bit about the gentrification related to, or in the aftermath of Katrina, displacing hundreds of thousands of Black folks and families. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of, I don't know if you want to call it a commemoration, but how New Orleans is kind of marking this particular moment as we're, on the cusp of the 20th anniversary.
Yeah, I mean, so this Friday will be the 20th anniversary of the Katrina hitting the city, and it's been it's a complex time for folks living in this city. I mean, I think today I've gone to several events commemorating the anniversary as kind of and looking at how policy shifts can, maybe protect and improve the city going forward. But at the same time, there is an energy hanging over the city in terms of people are still processing the trauma of such destruction. I did a story earlier this summer that looked at the fact that statistically there's this concept called death of despair. So they're deaths related to helplessness and poverty, thinking about like overdoses, addiction, and different health diseases related to poverty. And Louisiana leads the nation and is at the most risk. Louisiana residents are at the most risk to die such a death. And a lot of that has to do, at least in New Orleans, is living in the aftermath of really a gutted city, both in like the physical sense, but also in the sense of city infrastructure. When we think about health hospitals dying, mental health care being pulled out of the city, the education system being still to this day the only completely privatized education system in the United States, and what that means for Black and low income children. All of these converging factors still impact folks on a day to day, not to mention just the visceral trauma of kind of remembering what that was like for people who, spent over a week, some folks without access to, food and water, sleeping on bridges or on top of their roof while seeing, quite literally bodies floating by them. So it's a complicated week to say the least, but there's still a lot of joy and an attempt to kind of honor and remember that moment and all of the, the good that has happened over the last 2 decades.
Adam, I know it's hard to talk about photography on radio, but one of your recent pieces at Capital B is a kind of a profile of Polo Silk. Can you talk a little bit about who this photographer was, why his work is important, and what he captured in pre-Katrina New Orleans?
Yeah, Polo Silk is a cultural institution in New Orleans and across the South. He, in many ways, is like the kind of main documentarian of the kind of ascension and explosion of New Orleans rap in the 90s, thinking about Cash Money and with, Lil Wayne and Birdman and No Limit Records. But in the aftermath, he actually, arguably probably has the largest collection of physical pre-Katrina photos in a kind of miraculous way. He didn't lose any photos to the storm, even though his home flooded and his streets flooded. And throughout the 80s and 90s, he was well known for going to, second lines, the parades that go through New Orleans uptown neighborhoods on Sundays, or he would take photos of people there. He would set up a backdrop outside of kind of the main Black clubs and allow people to, pose and take photos in front of those. So he has all of these physical prints that kind of are a keepsake of both the physical culture of New Orleans and but also that memory. One of the things he brought up in our conversation was, he estimates he probably has about 500 photos of folks that have passed away, whether, through the storm or kind of the devastation that has followed the storm. And over the last 2 years, he's gone through this program, what she calls Blessing People, where he will print out a photo that he took of someone pre-Katrina, have it framed and give it to them so they can hold on to that memory and remember what their life was and who they were before the change, or before their city was remade.
That's amazing. It's great reporting too, Adam. One of the things that comes through in the piece is that, and I'm like a tourist in New Orleans. I've been there many times, but I don't, I've never lived there before. But one of the things that comes through in the piece is that post-Katrina New Orleans is still in some ways feels disconnected from pre-Katrina New Orleans. And it's not just about gentrification. Some of it's about the art. Some of it's about the music. I mean, you're there now and you reported there. I mean, is that your sense of it? Do you feel like there's some nostalgia for New Orleans lost in this particular one, especially as we're looking at the 20th anniversary of Katrina?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I don't think you could have a relationship or even kind of a conversation with a New Orleans native without them somewhere or another referring to pre-Katrina New Orleans. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, maybe to even tie it back to that gentrification conversation, this city has been completely remade, and the people that have called the city home are it's a completely different population of folks. I mean, pre-Katrina New Orleans was about 70% Black, and oscillating between a little above that and below that, but now it's about 55% Black, and we've seen, complete neighborhoods, transform. Just thinking about the lower Ninth Ward again, which was the poster child for devastation. The population of the lower Ninth before Katrina was 20,000. Today it's 5,000. And, there's been over 100% increase in the number of white residents that call that community home. It's still a majority Black neighborhood, but when you see, you have 3 homes on your street instead of 12, and maybe there's two new neighbors next to you, like that is just
And it happened so quickly and overnight where people didn't get to process it or necessarily have a say, where that, it's kind of inseparable from how people navigate through the city.
But even 20 years on, some of those lower Ninth Ward neighborhoods have not been fully rebuilt or not restored to the residential infrastructure pre-Katrina.
Yeah, exactly that. There are streets in the lower Ninth where there still are only one home on the entire block.
Wow.
Used to be, and at pre-Katrina, it was actually almost developed to capacity. So, people like to say if you see a empty block in the lower Ninth, there was a family there. Or an empty lot in the lower Ninth. There used to be a family there. So that's a burden too to carry. If you're going through your neighborhood and constantly being reminded of what was lost.
Adam Mahoney, climate and environment reporter, Capital B News. Thank you so much for the work and for your reporting. I hope you'll come back on Evening WURDs and share more of what from your reporter's notebook of some of the great stuff you're researching and interviewing people about. We really appreciate the work that you do.
You're checking out The Week on WURD. Stay connected on the go with the WURD Radio app. Search WURD Radio in your app store. Stream every show with increased clarity. Easily access WURD TV, EcoWord, and Livelihood. Remember, Black Media Matters. Get the WURD Radio app today. Available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Week on WURD. Let's stay together. Sign up for our newsletter and listen to us online at WURDradio.com and on the WURD Radio app.